Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the music ranking and reviewing podcast that we like to call Music Meltdown. Currently, it is just myself, Adrienne, and we're going to be discussing the studio discography of legendary blues rock guitarist Peter Green, formerly of the popular English blues band turned sort of soft rock turned pop rock band Fleetwood Mac. Fairly synonymous. Most people know them. Most people adore them. At the very least, the classic lineup featuring Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. However, we are not talking about that today. Instead, we are talking about the legendary guitarist and songwriter from the original incarnation of the group, Peter Green. In my opinion, group's best guitarist and male singer. So let's leave that one in check for whenever I do Fleetwood Mac. That being said, he has 5, technically 6 studio records to do a compilation that I commonly see grouped within his discography. And I counted one for The Who. Well, we counted one for The Who, so why not? It's not going to be that big a deal. One extra record, who cares? But yeah, with that being said, 6 studio records. Not really a ton of background going into this. I knew his studio work in Fleetwood Mac. Not really much of the singles, but I knew them play on pretty well, and I knew the self-titled as well. But I didn't really know much of his solo work very well, but I knew based upon how much I liked his playing, and from plenty of good things that I heard about some of his solo material, it would be something that I was very intrigued in getting into. And I was very glad that I just decided to take the plunge and dig into it. 6 records, and Cut to the Chase was a very enjoyable group of records, and I wouldn't call any of them subpar. But with that being said, let's start out with my number 6 being Little Dreamer. This was an interesting step for Peter Green to end up taking after the record. I'm totally blanking. After In the Skies. It was interesting to see where he went. He sort of went inspired by funk and disco at the time on this record, and the latter of which is very strong within the opening cut, Loser 2 Times, and the former is very popular in Mom Don't Cry, both of which are very strong songs. Baby When the Sun Goes Down is very strong as well. The primary issue with the record is that at points it feels rather landlocked in the bluesy combination of styles. And obviously, Peter Green, he is a blues guitarist. He is well renowned for his blues playing. But I feel like throughout all of these, he's able to really incorporate the blues into a very unique and a very interesting way that only he's able to through his playing. Where on this record, at points, it feels a little stock, a little generic bluesy, but it's still quite good. I love the song One Woman Love. There's a super groovy bass line to lead on the song, and Green's guitar touches accompany it amazingly. And as well, across the whole record, I love the organ playing by Roy Shipson. Overall, I call this record good. I think it's a solid piece of work. Just generally speaking, it's not as remarkable as most of his other works, and it does leave a little bit to be desired overall. Despite that, I would still recommend it. Next up, I'm going to his solo record, The End of the Game. This is such a bizarre record. For somebody that Fleetwood Mac were getting somewhat relevant, somewhat popular around this time, having some decent singles, and overall decent success for what they were, being a late 60s English blues band. But this direction is just so bizarre. For his first solo record, he actually goes into the world of jazz fusion, and it's fully instrumental, which Peter Green, in my opinion, is one of the absolute greatest singers of all time. I think his voice is genuinely stunning across most performances that he gives, but none of it on this record. And it's pretty interesting. Very improvisational and really well made. I don't have a massive understanding of jazz or jazz fusion or anything like this, so I'm not going to try and act as if I'm well versed in this camp. But Peter Green's guitar playing is just absolutely sensational. The drums as well, especially the usage of cymbals, is just excellent. Really showcasing that Peter Green can operate out of way more than just simply the blues. I don't have a ton to say about the individual songs as I'm just not personally versed enough to really properly discuss what makes them enjoyable, what makes them good. I won't try and act as if I'm any better than I am, but I think that this record could have done with maybe another track or two, or maybe just a couple of vocal passages to add a little bit more diversity to the record. I still give it 3.5, though. I still do think that it's a fairly good piece of work. Moving up from there, I'm talking about the record "Whatcha Gonna Do." This was the first one where he primarily was collaborating with his brother Mike Green, which is something he tended to do on these later period works. And he finally settled into a sound that I think that he was truly happy with in here. It's rather similar to Little Dreamer, with having plenty of the funk, blues, and disco elements, but I feel like the songs, generally speaking, are better written. It has more defined and more refined jamming moments, as well as some of Peter Green's best vocal performances as well are on here, as he sounds just absolutely sensational. The opener, Gotta Set Her Tonight, is just amazing. One of his best songs overall. Promised Land and Bullet to the Sky aren't too far behind that in quality. And Last Train to San Antonio and To Break Your Heart are also rather good. Despite that, there are a few weaker cuts, and I feel like this is possibly one of his lesser artistic records. He's not really trying to break any new ground on this one. Moreover, just perfect what he was starting on the previous record, which I think is very worthwhile. I think it's definitely worth a listen, but I could totally see somebody disregarding this one because of those sentiments. It's like that for me. I have this as a low 4 stars. I think it's a very good, very enjoyable record, and I would highly recommend it. Just a moment. Stopping a lot there. Apologies there. Next up, I'm going to be talking about the record that followed it, White Sky. Very tight between this and Whatcha Gonna Do, but I feel like this record just has overall higher highs to me. It's more overtly bluesy than the previous record, and I'd say most of the funky elements are unfortunately gone on here. It's going for a much more harder blues style, and I think it works out really well. Time for Me to Go is really good. I love the title track as well, one of his best jams. It's going to Be Me and Falling Apart are awesome within the back half. The biggest fault of this record is the first appearance of the song Funky Jam. It doesn't play that well to me in the first half, and just sort of kills the pace, in my opinion. While not revolutionary like most of his records, I think it's an incredibly solid work that showcases most of his talents in a way that only he could. Another lower 4 star record for me. After that, though, I'm talking about the record that arguably you could say shouldn't even count. I'm talking about Kolors. Yeah, and it sort of just feels like cheating putting it so high because, like I've been saying, it is a compilation record, but I've only ever seen it be included within his core discography, so I counted it anyway. Okay, and I'm very glad I did because, in many ways, this could be regarded as his best record. I would say, just song for song, it's an incredibly consistent batch of material from Green. His writing is an absolute top form. His playing is, as always, really sensational. I love the way this record is just more of a straight up blues performance, but it still has so much of the funk and pop elements that he could toy with throughout his catalog, and it makes it a really interesting collection of songs. My favorite one here has got to be Gotta Do It With Me, just probably my favorite Peter Green song overall. I just think that it really combines so much of what he would do in his solo catalog and just really does it all in the best way that it possibly could. Despite that, though, I still do only have this record at 4 stars, and it is my number 2 because there is a clear lack of cohesion here. You can tell the different sessions the songs were pulled from, and there isn't really a good flow and a good just overall pace for what the record ended up being. But for a compilation, this is probably one of my favorites of which I've actually heard. I think it's very good, but Funky Jam's on this record too, and the song still is kind of pointless, so don't know why that's there. There shouldn't be too much of a surprise. His only bolded record on Rate Your Music, and pretty definitively, in my opinion, his best record, I'm going to be talking about In the Skies as my number 1. I expected to go into this discography really enjoying it. Peter Green is one of my absolute favorite guitar players, as I may have not mentioned before, but yeah, I feel like this record is severely overlooked. Peter Green is able to showcase his talents in the best way that he ever does here. And my favorite thing about Peter Green as a player is he's not very flashy. He's not very he doesn't overdo things. He's not extravagant player. He's a very laid back and reserved style of player. And he more works to perfect the type of licks and solos and riffs that he creates with the songs. He isn't like, for example, he's not like a Stevie Ray Vaughan. He isn't like an Eddie Van Halen. He's not like a Ray Manzarek. He very much just sort of he creates the type of music that he wants to. He creates very atmospheric, very moving, and very groovy music. You really can just feel his playing, feel the soulfulness within it, feel the honest, and just you can feel Peter Green as a person through his guitar playing. He's not the best overall, he's not the most technical, but he's able to make up for it with the amount of heart and the amount of just beauty within his playing. Despite that, though, there's so much just really, really great songwriting on here as well. The title track is great. A Fool No More is an exceptional jam. I love the song Funky Chunky. It's showcasing, firstly, that he is not a one-trick player in blues, and he's able to incorporate funk in an equally convincing way. And yeah, the vocals are just sensational in this record. Probably his best vocals in general. The only song that I didn't really love here was Tribal Dance, a mostly instrumental that feels very much derivative across this record, which does sadly end up bumping this down to 4 stars for me, but a very high 4 stars. My 4-star range goes from an 8 to an 8.9. This is probably airing to an 8.8 or an 8.9. It is an incredibly close record, and I could see this one growing to 4.5 with more listens. That being said, though, I think that I've given my stand on Peter Green. I think that he is an incredible player. I think that he is an incredible talent, and really is just a shame that he took so much time off in between Fleetwood Mac and In the Skies. His solo debut record, I believe, came out in 1968, 1970, around there. And then he took the rest of the decade off until 78 with In the Skies. And you can tell that he had so much great material built up over that time that he was able to just let out all at once. And it just makes me wish that he could have kept making more records. He could have keep putting stuff out, keep pumping it out, and just sort of showcase how great of an artist that he really was. Because as it stands, I feel like he's more over-recognized as the base for Fleetwood Mac and the base for what would later become one of the greatest pop bands of all time. And his blues stuff is regarded in that sense, but not necessarily as cherished as I feel it should be. I think despite me not going above 4 stars, he is a really just sensational artist. And I think that all of these records are definitely worth your time. I would highly suggest you all seek them out. That being said, we are most definitely switching base here. With the next episode, we're going to get the long-awaited return of Miss Stilly. Steph is going to be returning to discuss a very long discography and a fun one at that. We're going to be talking about the 15 studio records of the one and only Sonic Youth. A really, really great band, in my opinion, really interesting group. So much material there, and it is hard to find something that you don't like. Well, it's not hard to find something that you don't like, but more often than not, if you dislike most of it, you're more than likely going to find at least something that you like. I really hope so. That being said, I really hope you enjoyed, and you all have an absolutely great one. Bye.